this is all because of a clearly politically motivated prank. No arrests have been made related to this yet. I hope they catch these people. They're not the only ones. Recently, Special Counsel Jack Smith, federal judge Tanya Chutkan, presiding over the Trump case, Democratic Congressman Eric Swalwell, Republican Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene, Republican Senator Rick Scott, Republican Missouri Attorney General Jay Ashcroft are just a few of those who've been swatted. But more attention has to be paid to the other victims, our men and women in law enforcement, who scrambled to respond to these fake calls. Few are talking about the price that law enforcement pays, citizens whose safety is put at risk. And look, anytime you send law enforcement in, you are creating risks. But the partisan media, no, they don't care about that. They just want to score some points.
So this is the legacy of January 6th and the elevation of violence, or the threat of violence, as sort of an extension of our democracy and of our election process.
Republicans are being targeted with bogus 911 calls designed to have them shot by the cops.
People have asked whether, if Trump is reelected, we will see political violence. We are already seeing political violence. These threats are very, very serious indeed.
This is not a partisan issue. Extremists on both sides are targeting high-profile leaders. We lose sight of the law enforcement officers who've been victimized, used as pawns, so extremists can put a scare into high-profile figures that they don't like. Talked about this before, but then you have people like MSNBC's Joy Reid actually using swatting incidents as another excuse to actually attack law enforcement. Reid talked about the swatting incident targeting Judge Chutkan and used the occasion to take a cheap shot at police.
There have been a number of Democratic politicians and others who've been swatted. She's now faced that, too. That is, of course, when somebody calls the police and says something horrible is happening at your home. They've given out your address so that the police will come and maybe shoot you. And she is a black woman, so we know the risk of that is real.
So you got Jesse Waters on the right saying, oh, it's these Republicans, they're all being swatted. You got Joy Reid on the far left saying, oh, it's just these Democrats who are all getting swatted. As if our men and women in law enforcement don't face enough high-pressure, dangerous situations. Now we're inventing new ones for them. Let's bring back in Gary MacNamara, retired police chief from the Fairfield, Connecticut, and former crisis negotiator who served as a police chief during a significant swatting incident there. Gary, thanks for coming back on the program. Appreciate it. All right, so take me into the mind of the police officers arriving at Nikki Haley's home, right? They know what this report is. They see that silhouette. Explain to us what happens.
Well, they're going under the information that they're getting from the dispatcher. So the dispatcher's receiving that information. They're receiving information that a gun was already discharged, so someone already shot somebody, and that there's the potential for somebody still having that firearm in their hand. So they're going to that scene with the assumption that there's already violence. And you mentioned that they are holding their weapons, displaying them, because they want to have their weapons at a point of readiness to defend themselves or defend someone else within the house. And the issue becomes the people in the house, to your point, Dan, don't know that the police are there because they suspect something of violence. And it's that innocence of someone coming forward, confronting a law enforcement officer whose heightened awareness of a crime of violence exists where the problem really can occur.
The bottom line is, in my view, no one who says they're pro-law enforcement can ever engage in swatting. Would you agree with me?
100%, 100%. Waste of resources, and they're putting the officers in jeopardy, and their decision-making for real calls is going to come into play here. If you respond to a swatting incident that is a crime of violence and it's not, the next time you go to a real crime of violence, you're going to be second-guessing your approach and whether or not this is real or not.
How do you catch the swatters?
Yeah, you know, we've had some local success, but sometimes they're international. You know, something to keep in mind, Dan, they can't call 911. If you call 911 from your house, you get your local department. So oftentimes the calls that are coming in are not through 911. They're coming in the direct line of the police department. Dispatchers are trained to notice that, recognize it, and hopefully getting the message out is so important. And technology can't help, but it's ultimately very difficult to track these individuals down.
Well, look, I hope that they catch them, throw the book at them. It's just so serious. from a law enforcement perspective. And, you know, while the political actors all want to make this about the politics and you guys are doing it to us, and this is about law enforcement, the threat that it poses to them. And God, imagine if a law enforcement officer on a swatting scene, and you tell me, I'm sure it's happened, ends up harming someone, right? Out of fear for themselves, right? And imagine the guilt that officer is now living with, right?
That's exactly right. The guilt of the officer, their family, it changes their lives forever. It has happened before, and people have to stop using police to score political points and harass politicians that ultimately are just trying to serve our communities. There's better ways to identify that, but using the police as pawns is a dangerous game to play.
Hey, thank you for watching. Please go to newsnationnow.com, newsnationnow.com, and you can find News Nation on your television provider. And don't forget to click the red subscribe button down below. Then you will get more of News Nation's fact-driven coverage.